I'm Jerusha Sukhthia-Rath and you're watching News 24 Live. It's that time of the week when we take a news story and certainly something that South Africans are talking about and discuss it with experts in studio for an hour. I'm going to cross now to News 24 Live producer Noxolo Mafu. Noxie, won't you cue us in? What are we speaking about today? And you're going to take us through what people are saying on social media.
Definitely. So what we found that we're talking about police brutality today and people's responses to what the police do and their trust for the police. So if we take to Twitter, we'll see that Mzwandile says, this year is a very tough year in South Africa. Police brutality, rape and killing of women going higher and higher. What went wrong, guys? We have Sisa Rafuza, who says, why are we surprised about police brutality? The rhetoric of shoot to kill and militarizing the police are a result of this. And lastly, from Kyle, we have, I feel like I'm through a military state. The streets don't feel safe. I feel as though I should fear police brutality. And this, of course, is in reference to Sona and the kind of police presence that was there.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Now, we're joined via Skype by Johan Berger from the Institute for Security Studies, and sitting next to me in studio, Bram Honnekom. He is the co-founder of PASOP. Thank you so much for joining us. Johan, I'd like to begin with you. Won't you respond to those social media messages that we got through when it comes to this topic? Many South Africans saying that they're feeling as though they're living in a police state. Would you agree?
Well, I'm not certain I heard all of it, but from what I did hear, it's obvious that South Africans generally are concerned with police brutality as a particular problem, and also that it has a very, very negative impact on police-community relations. Now, there are, of course, also other police actions that impede on this relationship with communities, but police brutality, I think, certainly has become a problem. We know, for example, that for the last decade until about 2 years ago, cases of police brutality that were investigated by the Independent Complaints Directorate before it became IPID increased in that decade by about 300%. So it clearly has become a huge problem. To some extent, it correlates with the expansion of the police service during that same time by just over 50%. But so clearly that is a problem, and I think what exacerbates the problem, or what makes it more visible, is the development of technology through cell phone technology, video footages, and so on, that are now much quicker in terms of making everyone aware of what the police are doing, especially what they are doing that is illegal, that is wrong, and that has a negative impact on public perception.
That's quite right, because I think of the incident that involved the taxi driver, Miriam Masia. We saw that come through via cell phone footage, something that we wouldn't have usually seen. But of course, people on the scene with cell phones are making this footage readily available to everyone. Bram, I want to come to you. Just having read or listened to those social media reactions, what is your initial thought?
Well, I think it's a bit extreme to refer to South Africa as a police state. I think that the incident that happened in Parliament is unfortunate on a number of accounts. I don't think any role player in that incident should be proud of their conduct. I think it's really unfortunate what happened during Sona, but I think that it's a really huge exaggeration to now say that South Africa is a police state. We're in a very difficult conundrum where we do have a serious problem of police brutality. At the same time, we have a serious problem with huge crime being committed, violent crime in our communities. So we're in this difficult situation where, on one hand, one has a police force or a police service that needs to do a more efficient job, that needs to be stronger and affirm its role in society. On the other hand, the police force or service is struggling with its own hooliganism and its own thugs and its own criminals within its ranks. So we find that South Africa is in a complicated situation, but certainly South Africa is very, very far from a police state. We shouldn't allow that narrative to dominate because it discredits the legitimate concerns that people have around police brutality. Israel mans Palestine in a way where one could say it's a police state or a military state. Apartheid South Africa at some point treated its citizenry as a police state would treat its people. And there are other countries around the world that one could call a police state. But I think the least of those countries should be the South African government or the South African country. People here are allowed to exercise huge freedoms. We have a lot of problems, and we know these problems, and we are trying to confront them. But I think it would be very unreasonable, or I think it would be irresponsible for us to give much airtime to that narrative of the police state. When it comes to police brutality, I think we have serious systemic structural problems that exist within the police. Certainly, the police during the apartheid era were used as a weapon against the majority of South African people. And during this dispensation and over the last 20 years, South Africa has put a lot of effort to try rebrand the police into being an organization of people working for government, implementing certain laws and ensuring that crime should be reduced. Then, of course, we found crime still being a serious problem, and then we saw the former General Bheki Cele come in with a much more militarized approach, which, of course, had its threats and dangers. And then, of course, we were all very critical that the police might be more violent than they should have been, and should we blame the politicians concerned? I'm not sure. I think that the police in South Africa have, for the last 150 years, been extremely brutal and extremely violent. In fact, during apartheid, we'll know that there are certain police stations which were renowned for torturing people. We still have many of those same police from apartheid that the new government in South Africa kept within the ranks of the police force. So we mustn't be surprised when there are police brutality. I mean, when police are brutal and when there's police brutality as a problem within the police force. But it's a very complicated problem, and it cannot be simplified to a point of saying that we're in a police state.